Good evening. Good evening. Muy buenas noches. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, May 16th, 2017. Can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blanks?
Here.
Ms. Exum?
Here.
Dr. Greenberg?
Here.
Dr. Overmeyer Velasquez?
Here.
Mr. Paul Uke?
Here.
Mr. Zadanowitz?
Here.
Student Representatives Hugo Barrione
Here.
and Sarah Berman.
Here.
Hugo, can you please lead us in the pledge? We have no revision to the agenda order, but we do have the pleasure of student participation. Mr. Moore, can you introduce our guests, please?
Come on up. This is the middle school web program where everyone belongs. I wasn't sure if Joy or Andrew were coming up, but I guess no. We've got Troy. There we go. You can if you want.
Yeah.
But I'm good. Okay, go ahead. By all means.
I'm a visual learner. Just to give you some visuals to go along
No problem.
with what we're going to share about. All right. Good evening. Thank you for providing us with the opportunity to share some amazing things about the web leaders at King Philip, Sedgwick, and Bristow, and the things that they've done to help make the middle school experience much more comfortable for our sixth graders. I'd like to start by introducing the web coordinators at each building. At King Philip, my name is Troy Jones. This is Marisa Tamayo and Marnie Paulus here in white. At Bristow, Priya White, and unfortunately Mackenzie Fitzgerald couldn't make it this evening, but she is the co-coordinator at Bristow. And at Sedgwick, we have Anna Allman, and we also have 2017 Current Teacher of the Year finalist, Pamela Matway. You're absolutely, listen, you earned every bit of that. So WEB stands for Where Everybody Belongs. WEB's main goal is to successfully transition sixth graders by addressing three fundamental transition needs: safety, information, and connection. Currently, between our three middle schools, we have over 125 eighth grade web leaders. In addition to running the 3-hour sixth grade orientation, our web leaders meet with their morning advisory groups and teach monthly lessons. Topics include perspective, leadership and fellowship, time management, and even how to make friends. Social follow-ups happen throughout the school year as well. Dances, bingo evenings, and even web leaders providing breakfast for our sixth graders. So why does middle school transition matter? Because the quality of a student's transition to middle school sets the tone for their educational experience. Middle school students who consistently miss school, have lower grades, or fall grade level behind are statistically more likely to drop out of high school, or even worse, not even make it to high school. So what would happen if older students were given the resources, the skill, and the permission to help change this, and the structure to do it? Providing a transition structure that connects eighth graders to our incoming sixth graders and includes effective training and the necessary support to make the relationship meaningful allows our sixth graders to focus on school rather than having to wonder how or if they're going to fit in. In other words, to help our sixth graders succeed, we need to help them transition. I would now like to introduce Liv Drazen to you. She is one of our amazing web leaders at King Philip, and she's going to share a little bit about why her role is so important.
Hello, I'm Liv Drazen, an 8th grader at King Philip Middle School, and I really think that WEB is a very important program because it helps 6th graders adjust very well. Even starting from orientation, they get to meet the kids who will be in their MA the entire year, and they get to meet some 8th graders that they'll see throughout the hallways all year. And I really think that it's a very easy transition when given the opportunity to meet people even before school starts. And I really think if I had the opportunity to have web when I was in 6th grade, I would have loved it. And I think it's really important to continue this for 6th graders to come.
Hello, my name is Ariana Fandozzi, and I am one of 24 8th grade web leaders at Bristow Middle School. And so stands for Where Everybody Belongs, and our main job as web leaders is to help the transition go well from 5th grade to 6th grade. And so about 2 weeks before school starts, we come in for a training where we learn icebreaker type games to teach at the orientation. And so at the orientation, we take them to their advisories, we play the games, and help them become more familiar with their other advisees. And so the main lessons that we've gone through has to do with community and school spirit. Because our school is so small, we're able to do that. And so for me, web has helped me become a good mentor and improve my leadership skills, and I'm so happy I was able to participate in this group. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Camille Townswick, and I am a 6th grader at Bristow Middle School. When I came to 6th grade, I was most afraid that I wouldn't be able to find friends that would accept me for me. The web program helped me feel comfortable and accepted in my new school. In addition, it gave me people to talk to and go to if I had any questions. I am so thankful that I was able to be a part of this program and have people to help me transition. Thank you.
So I think the most important thing about web is that the orientation day is really just the beginning of the program. It's a way to introduce the 8th graders to the 6th graders, and we strive to continue to build that relationship throughout the school year through doing a variety of social activities, as Troy had pointed out, or to get them together during morning advisory to kind of just figure, how are things going? You started it now, you came in, but what is it all like? So Anna's going to talk to you a little bit about a few activities we've done at Sedgwick.
So one of the very first things that we did to make sure that relationship that they built during orientation was solidified throughout the entire year. We had students, the web leaders, actually attend 6th grade lunch and sit with their students and just ask them, how is your week going? How are things going? Can you still open your locker? Are you struggling with something? Yes, oh my gosh, I'm going to help you find that classroom. So that is just one way that we continue to make those 6th graders feel like they have someone to go to and there's someone there for them all the time. And then something that we did at Sedgwick was we have our special advisory period, and so we actually had the web leaders go down to the 6th grade advisories and actually help their web kids, we like to call them, prepare for their student-led conferences. They actually shared their own experience of how they led their own conferences to kind of alleviate that, maybe stress or anxiety about having to do this on their own for the very first time, and actually help guide them through filling out a script of what they would say in their student-led conference and help them gather evidence of work that was their best work and then also some work that they were struggling with and help them reflect on that and how they would actually talk about it in their student-led conference. So that's just some examples of how we continue this program after orientation. Thank you.
So I wanted to thank everyone for letting us talk about web, and I wanted to just open it up if anyone had any questions about it or anything like that.
Well, thank you all for doing, especially the students for speaking so eloquently in front of us. It's not, yes, let's give them a round of applause. It's not lost on us, these kinds of programs. We get presentations about curriculum and math this and social studies this and state standards that, but having these kinds of details about the everyday life in our schools and the kind of exciting, courageous, important work that you're doing and focusing on the whole student and understanding that education is connected to these where my locker is and helping them become leaders is really dynamic and exciting, and we really appreciate it. I don't know if my fellow board members have any questions, but I want to register my thanks.
No, it's a great program. My daughter was involved, and really just a fabulous program. I knew it from both sides. So in the locker with the combination, let me tell you, that is big, very stressful. And I can attest to that. So I think Bob Palmer and Tom are putting in the budget where we're going to have fingerprints on the locker, so you don't have to use it. So we don't have to use the combinations.
You'd vote against it.
just have a quick question. Thank you so much for this. This is exciting to hear because I have an incoming sixth grader, and this wasn't here before when my other two have graduated. But for seventh grade, so what happens during the seventh grade year? Are these students that do you start recruiting towards eighth graders, doing the same thing as leaders? What do you do during the seventh grade year?
Anna and I, like at Sedgwick, we like to call it it's an interview the entire year for the web leader process. So everything that happens throughout the seventh grade year, we say as part of your interview process to become a web leader. So definitely start the recruitment in early to kind of get things going and get people excited. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I've got my voice projected.
No, it does.
It's the teacher voice.
At Bristow, actually, I can speak to back in right before April break, we had our current 8th grade leaders go down to the 7th grade advisories and do some of those quick orientation activities and lessons they do at the very beginning of the year. So it gave them kind of like a little foreshadowing of what to expect as 8th graders. And we're in the midst of accepting applications right now. So thank you.
15 more seconds, sorry. To piggyback on the application piece, at King Philip, we're doing the same thing. So we have a little over 300 7th graders right now, and we just received over 120 applications to be a web leader for 8th grade. So I feel like that speaks a little bit to the intentionality of the program and what is happening in 7th grade, knowing that they experienced it as a 6th grader, and now they have that desire to help other 6th graders, make them feel comfortable as they enter the school as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, guys. We're moving on to public communications. And I have a sign-up sheet here. So just because there's a number of people, I'll just review our protocol, which is we receive comments from topics of interest from the public. We, as tradition has it, do not respond as a board, and individuals are allotted 3 minutes. At the 2-minute mark, a yellow card will come up, and then that means you have a minute left, and then at the 3-minute mark, you'll have a red card come up. Please state your name and your address. We welcome people from West Hartford and elsewhere. And finally, there's 20 minutes per subject, so I'm looking like there are 7 people on the same topic, so that should exhaust the 20 minutes, and that's maybe planned, so good on you. Our first speaker, Sarah Raskett.
Thank you all very much for allowing us to speak. I'm going to just pass out a little handout for you. So we very much appreciate the chance to address the Board of Education on this tremendously important public health issue that impacts all of our children here in West Hartford. I'm here representing a group that's now approximately 200 West Hartford residents who have all been actively involved in working on improving the health of our high school students. You may recall that we came back in January to speak with you. Then we gave you a break during the budget period, but now we're back. So back in January, you heard from the parent of an athlete, you heard from a high school teacher, you heard from an adolescent psychologist, you heard from a West Hartford sleep expert who's here again tonight, and several other parents. And tonight we've brought for you a completely new group of parents from our group who also want to speak with you, including one high school student. I just want to emphasize that as a group, we are committed to working in any way we can to help find a cost-neutral solution, and that we have not, it's not up to us, obviously, in any way to advocate a particular schedule. That's up to you and to the superintendent. But I just want to appease some fears that we have not been advocating any change to the elementary schools. And I just want to end my segment by reiterating that changes in the school start time have been advocated by no less than the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, all of whom say that because of circadian rhythms and changes that occur at puberty, high school should not start before 8:30 in the morning. And there has now, since this issue was looked at many years ago in this town, been overwhelming evidence that has come out recently that says that later school start times, when compared to schools that started earlier, improve academic performance and the likelihood of academic success, reduce tardiness, truancy, dropout rates, and delinquency, improve alertness, memory, attention, and cognitive processing skills, reduce mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, improve athletic performance and reduce sports-related injury, improve health, improve immunity, and reduce rates of car crashes. So I think with one easy fix, we can help a lot of problems that are facing our teens right now. And I just want to introduce the data that our next speaker is going to be presenting to you, which is from a survey that we did of high school students last summer, both Conard and Hall. It is in no way a scientific survey, but it just hopefully will give you a little bit of a snapshot of what the high school students in our town are thinking.
Great, thanks very much. Next up, Emma Waddell.
Yeah, all right, so this is a survey that was put out like on Facebook and a bunch of other social media platforms, asking students in West Hartford Public Schools a bunch of questions about start times. So about like 170 people answered. So the first question that was asked was the question, have you ever fallen asleep in class? So as you can see, the majority of people said yes a few times, and 70% of people said yes at all. Only 30% said they'd never fallen asleep in class. The second question that was asked was, how often are you groggy, sluggish, or tired during first period? And 73% of people said often, and only less than 1% said never are they sluggish during first period. The next question was, by what period in school do you feel you're truly awake? And the majority of people said third period, and only 8% of people said by first period are they truly awake. Next question was, what time do you feel like your body naturally wants to go to sleep on weeknights? And the majority of people said 10:30 to 11:30 p.m. Next one was, how much sleep per night do you believe teenagers need? So most people said around 8 hours to 9 hours, which just shows that they know how much sleep they need, even if they're not getting it. Next one was, if alarm clocks didn't exist and no one woke you up, what time do you think you would normally wake up? And the majority of people said 9:30 or later, and only 4% said by 7 would they wake up naturally. And then the next one was, if it were up to you, which of the following times would you choose to have school start? And 70% of people said 8:30, and only 3% said 7:30. And yeah, that's all of them. All right, thank you.
Can you state your address, please? For the record?
193 North Quaker Lane.
Thank you. Next speaker, Judy Wyman-Kelly.
Judy Wyman-Kelly, 52 Thompson Road. I'm here to speak in favor of delaying the start time for high school students. I speak personal experience with my two daughters. My eldest daughter, who's a senior this year, 9th and 10th grade, impossible to get her out of bed, always tired, complained of being tired during the school day. Even though she went to bed around 9 or 9:30, she got a lot of sleep. We even did a sleep study on her because we couldn't figure out why she was tired during the day, wanting to fall asleep in class. The sleep study was inconclusive, nothing wrong with her sleeping, no sleep apnea, nothing like that, or any problems that the doctor could identify. It's just the time she was getting up that was so difficult. Second daughter, who's a 9th grader now, was the early bird, woke up at 5:30 every morning, the one that you were just like, please go back to sleep. I can't wait till you sleep in. Yeah, when does she start sleeping in? Summer before 9th grade. And now I can't get her out of bed. So she's the one who, you really see the circadian rhythm changing for her during puberty because she was really a wake up early person. And now right when her body needs her to sleep in, she's got to get up to go to school at 7:30. So in my own two daughters, I can see how the 7:30 start time is not to their benefit. Then there's the people we carpooled with. So how many mornings was I sitting there waiting for them to get out of the house and come to school? So it wasn't just my own family. It was the 2 or 3 other people on the street that I saw it with. So I just really think there's so much scientific research now, as Sarah said. And then in my own experience, it makes sense for you to really reconsider seriously the idea of starting high school later, even though I know it's complicated. And there are a lot of other things that you need to take into account. I think it's to the benefit of our high school students. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mary Beth Callan. Hi.
I am Mary Beth Callan Serdechny, 115 Grennan Road, proud Conard graduate, proud parent of a current Conard Jr., third generation in our family to go through the West Hartford school system. I'm a retired lead planning analyst with the state of Connecticut. I used to work primarily in the juvenile justice policy development planning area. So I have some data from the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention showing how most juvenile crime actually happens in the immediate after-school hours between 3 and 7 in the afternoon. And even though the data I'm showing you here shows violent juvenile crime, excuse me, other crimes and risky behavior follow the same pattern, that most crime happens immediately after school on school days, even more so than non-school days. So it follows the argument that children who are well rested, perhaps are in school longer in the afternoon, have less time to get in trouble, per se, before their parents come home, less risky behavior, less drug use, fewer car accidents, and fewer teen pregnancy, it's also shown. So I just wanted to share this information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Maria LaRusso.
Hi. So I live at 5 Bishop Road. I'm a West Hartford parent. My kids are actually 4 and 6. So for me personally, this is far off, but it's something that I do care about. I'm also a professor at UConn, and my work focuses on programs and school curricula and interventions that promote adolescent social and emotional well-being and academic success. So in the kind of work that I do, we do these evaluations of all these different kinds of programs and innovations and curricula. And what we find is that there are so many issues around the implementation of these programs. So things like teacher buy-in, teacher turnover, the quantity and quality of the implementation of the program, the fidelity of implementation. So how well it actually happens, how well it actually gets implemented, the costs involved, the time it takes, whether a school can find time to actually do whatever program is supposed to produce whatever outcome. And then when you actually have programs that do work, you have the problem of sustainability. You have the costs of the investment in keeping a program going year after year after year, and most programs ultimately don't end up continuing for that long. So despite the logistic hurdles of changing the school schedule, this is actually one of the easiest things that you can do to improve adolescent well-being in high schools. Once you change the schedule, that's it. You're done. There's nothing to implement. There's no materials to purchase, to maintain. There's no professional development of staff. There's no coaching required. There's no burden on staff. There's no loss to instructional time, as most programs require. So, and there's no risk, which this is always a risk in my field, that in a few years, a better program will be identified, and everybody has to get retrained all over again, and you have to invest more money and more resources. So I want to acknowledge that it can be a major undertaking initially to make this happen, but in my experience and in my view, the alternatives are a lot more work, require a lot more resources, and the results are much less reliable.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Abaya Ruel.
Hi, Abaya Ruel, 53 Pocahontas Drive. First I want to say thank you for listening to us. I know you guys have a lot of people that come in and talk about what's important to them, so hopefully this will be important to you also. I first joined this organization about a year ago. My 3 kids are young, elementary school or younger, so it doesn't affect them just yet. But I first joined just when I heard about it. I remembered myself as a high schooler, and it was a terrible time in my life, having to wake up and get to school by 7:20. I mean, that's really unrealistic. It was to me, it was to a lot of my friends, it was to my brothers. Many times we missed the bus and ended up walking to school. That was before parents drove their kids. And now I'm speaking as a parent, and I was a former teacher of high school, a former teacher of elementary school, and a PTO president of a local elementary school. And I've spoken to a lot of other PTOs about this issue, high school, middle school, elementary school, and a lot of them had positive feedback. They all felt that it would be beneficial to their students, their children, and even the elementary school parents were like, thank you for doing this. You know, if this goes through, life will be so much easier when my kids are in high school, because we all project what we remember ourselves going through onto our kids. The stress level is going to be higher, the stakes are higher now than they were when we were kids. It was a lot more kind of low-key, I feel. And I just feel if we can do anything to make their lives a little bit easier as they get older and as the stress level rises, this is a small change that all the studies have shown makes a really big impact on their lives. So I hope you'll really consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. The next speaker on my list is Beth Russell.
Hi, I'm Beth Russell. I live at 62 Leonard Road. I'm also a professor at UConn. In fact, I work with Maria, not by design at all. I'm happy to see a friendly face here, though. I hope you'll forgive the repetition, but I wanted to take a minute and give you a bird's eye view of where I, as a scholar in resilience, see the role of sleep in adolescent well-being. In particular, my recent work is in substance abuse prevention and treatment for high schoolers, so looking at alternative models for how to engage kids who are already struggling with problems, get them back on track so that they can finish a high school degree within 2 or 3 years of what would be considered an on-time trajectory. So over 20 years ago, the journal Science published a paper titled "To Sleep, Perchance to Learn, New Studies Say Yes." So that was in 1994. Then in 1998, an academic paper entitled "Sleep Schedules and Daytime Functioning in Adolescence" was published in one of the most highly regarded journals in child development. The paper has become the highest cited paper of its kind, informing over 875 more studies of its type in the last 20 years alone. So since then, many studies have shown us that sleep certainly impacts learning and memory and academic performance, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that we've, in that 20 years, demonstrated reliable links to other social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. You heard reference to some juvenile justice data earlier. There are also links to obesity, to substance use, to teenage pregnancy. These aren't single studies. They've been replicated many times and appear in some of the most rigorous journals in our profession, science being one of them. Sleep and circadian rhythms do change in adolescence. In the article titled "Circadian Preference, Sleep and Daytime Behavior in Adolescence," published over a decade ago, covered data from over 6,000 14 to 18-year-olds. That's a lot by any measure, even for an academic paper.
Researchers found that the natural shift forward to later sleep habits started as early as 15, and as in all things with puberty, because of the gender differences in the timing, that affects our girls before it impacts our boys. So we're certainly talking about, at its early edge, girls most likely to hit a circadian shift that pushes them up later at night, chopping their sleep cycles into fewer and fewer hours if we're waking them up as early as, say, 6 or 6:30 to start at our typical sleep cycle time. The boys hit 2 years later. Their shift will come by about 17 on average. So regardless of how you slice it, this is an impact that affects all of the kids in our high schools. And I hope that the Board of Education will take that summary of the impact of this science and remember that it's not just about learning, it's actually about their behavioral health outcomes outside the classroom that are setting the stage for patterns into adulthood as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I have no one else on the sign-up sheet, but would anyone else like to address the board? I believe it on a different topic, since we've exhausted this one. I mean, not exhausted, but for Anyway, anyone else like to address the board tonight? All right, we're not. Moving on. Unfinished business. Motion by Tammy Exum, Cheryl Greenberg, and Mark Zdanowicz to approve the new policy 2240. This is a second reading, which means it's our final reading. Can I have a motion to approve the 2240 educational research in district schools?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Yeah, this is, we talked about this earlier. This is this and the ones to come. Again, we've already read. This is about educational research to make sure that it is relevant, that it's not, that it doesn't interfere with the school day or intrusive in any other way, and it's not invading anybody's privacy. So it's just protection.
As always, thanks to the subcommittee for dealing with this. I think we've reviewed this last time, and all those in favor of approving as a second and final reading the policy which is proposed by the Board Policy Subcommittee 2240 Educational Research in District Schools, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have a motion to recommend, to approve as second and final reading the following policies, which were also revised by the Board Policy Subcommittee: 6270, Parent Instruction of Children at Home, and 6500, Adult Continuing Education. A motion? Second?
Second.
Mr. Z?
So this one is really more of an update of where child instruction is at home. You know, if you see some of the completely removing the old ones from 1991 with the new updated language and the legal references as well. So just more of a complete update to what's apparent today versus what was back in 1991. So certainly if anybody has any questions, we can go over that as well.
Again, all of these are both at the table there, and these are all, as were all of our policies, online for people to review if they wish. And 6500, since we're voting for both at the same time.
So again, this is the adult continuing education and some of the mandated programs. Again, we're removing all the verbiage and updating it with more pertinent programs, and as we speak about the mandated programs, the enrichment program, and even some of the legal references. This hasn't been updated since 1988, so after the review, a definitely rewrite was in order, and we all agreed upon this one as far as the language, and we put it in front of you. This is our second reading, so if there's any questions, we can certainly address it.
An obvious reflection of the thorough work of the committee. All those in favor of approving as a second and final reading policy 6270 and 6500, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. where are you all at with reviewing policies as far as?
So I believe there are 6 or 8.
Yeah, we have a handful of legacy ones that were missed during the first go-through of the book that we're doing some polishing on a couple of them, just updating legal references, and so we'll have a couple of more at the next board meeting, and then we'll have to make a decision. We have a policy meeting on Friday afternoon, and we'll have to make a decision on some of them. Do we want to bring them for first reading in June, knowing that the second one will be not until August, or we just want to go ahead and defer them all until August? So we'll decide that as a subcommittee on Friday.
But once that's complete, those, I believe, are all from
That's it.
1988.
Yes, these
And then
are
the
the-
entire, I think we prematurely said a month or so ago that we had reviewed everything, but after a second review, we found 6 to
Yeah.
9 ones that had not been reviewed since like 1988. So we did, and those are going to be a kind of a revamp, if you will, because of their 1988 language and some
They
of
were
the,
just skipped over for various reasons
Right.
as the committees have gone through over the years.
So then we'll begin again.
Right.
Then we will start up again.
It's like the Torah. It's like the Torah cycle.
It is exactly.
We'll have to
It is
do
exactly.
We'll have to
Yep.
have a simcha. Excellent. All right. Thank you again. Moving on. Thank you, Dr. Morrow. New state business. State of Connecticut Healthy Food Certification for 2017-2018. So, a motion to approve West Hartford Public Schools take action to certify that all West Hartford schools will comply with the Connecticut Nutrition Standards pursuant to Section 10-215E of the Connecticut General Statutes for the periods of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. And their exemptions will be allowed for the sale of food items that do not meet with Connecticut Nutrition Standards, provided that 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend, and 2, the sale is at the location of the event, and 3, the food is not sold from a vending machine or school store. Have a motion? Second? To help us understand this, we turn it over to our guests at the table. Welcome.
So good morning, good evening. So before I talk a little about this, I want to introduce our new Director of Nutrition Services, who is Tim Prozinski. He is replacing Trish Malloy, who retired. We are very lucky to have him. He has tremendous experience both in all areas of the food preparation business. He's been working as the director at Berlin Public Schools for the last 10 years or so. Prior to that, he worked in the private sector, and he has some chef experience as well. So we're very lucky to have him. We're excited to have him. And I'm going to turn it over to him to explain to you, this is our routine annual certification on the Healthy Foods Program.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr.
Press the button.
Welcome, Mr. Brzezinski.
Hello, everybody. Excited to be here. Yeah, the Healthy Food Certification, like Chip said, I've got experience. I've spent the last 11 years in Berlin, and it was always something that for like the last 5 or 6 years that we went through. It really doesn't impact the district that much, other than, like you had stated, the times that the foods can be sold, which pretty much covers every sporting event, every play, those types of things. The normal realm of where those things are sold, and that kind of boils it right down. And then it keeps, of course, then everything that we do in the food service department with all the cafeterias, we follow all the healthy food certification standards there, which is monitored obviously on a daily basis. Thank you.
So at the track event today, we had Bumsky's Donuts outside the main entrance, which Bumsky's guy is local here. He's a local West Hartford guy. So it was great to see that, and it was a big line too. So
we didn't make those donuts, nor did we serve them.
No, I know, but it was at a sporting event. It was a sporting event, and it was to raise money for Conard. It was a great.
Come from the school store.
No. It was great. Now there's potential change in our national nutritional guidance. And so obviously we can be flexible enough. This doesn't hold us back in any way. If the guidelines change, we can change with them, correct?
Correct. Yeah, because if anything changes on the national, from the way I understand it right now, if anything changes on the national level as far as the National School Lunch Program, from what I understand, they're going to pass that right down to the state, and then the state will dictate.
Certificate?
No, we won't.
Excuse me, I think, I mean, it's clear that we wouldn't have to recertify if Connecticut changes, but isn't it possible that the federal government would change it, but then Connecticut would decide not to change it? Right, this rests on Connecticut. So if Connecticut says we're sticking with it, then we stick with it, right? We
Correct.
don't-
Correct. Yes, that's correct. This is a state.
Right,
At the state
but
level.
there's federal dollars involved.
So that was my question. What's the money tie with the state level versus the federal level?
So, couple things on that. One is our Connecticut healthy food standards are roughly in line with the federal standards now. They are not in line with the new federal standards that were going to go into place, which has been rescinded. Is that generally correct? So in other words, we would have had to up the standards to be consistent with, the Connecticut would have had to up the standards to be consistent with the Fed. Those new standards have been rolled back. So any changes, any addition, if the federals roll back and say, yeah, you can serve fries, pizza, and all that sort of stuff, that would still require action on the part of the state of Connecticut enable us to be able to serve fries and such. We get 6 cents a meal or 10 cents? 10
cents.
10 cents for the healthy food. So we get 10 cents a meal by following these food standards. And we serve around 700,000 meals a year.
This isn't exactly about the standards. It's about your chef experience, really. But I'm totally in favor of the nutrition standards. I think it's great. We have to keep our kids healthy. But the fact is they're not eating these lunches. So while I'm not advocating lightening the standards, do you have any ideas of what's worked to help encourage students to eat within the bounds of what we're allowing them to do?
Right now, being that I'm here on my 4th week, I'm taking a look at what we're doing. I think, to be honest with you, my first overview of the program, everybody's doing a wonderful job. I think the food presentation, the products that we're using are really excellent. There are some different, there are some different trends out there that I think we can capitalize on, especially in the middle and the high school, that I think a lot of kids do. I mean, for example, I think we can kind of within the standards, obviously, because we have to follow them, I think we can, mock like a Chipotle type of thing. There's certain things like that I think that a lot of things that we need to do. I think we need to advertise and promote the great things that the staff is doing in the cafeteria. I've already had a conversation, and excuse me, I'm learning everybody's names, but with the principal over at Conard, and I've got some insight with him of how we're going to get on to the TV boards, social media, with talking right to their phones. I mean, their noses are in them all day. Of course, in the way that the school district allows. Friday at Conard, actually, I'm going to be doing a cooking demo for the kids and trying to get some time out there to talk to them and engage them in conversation of what they're looking for. So those are things that we're working on, just right now out of the gate, if you will. Thank you.
So I've heard and read about these legendary Chef Tim days. Yes. Do you think that'll happen in West Hartford? And if so, when? Can you explain Chef Tim days to the board?
Boy, that followed me here, huh? Yeah, it was actually what Friday is going to be at Conard is a Chef Tim Day. And what it is it's like a concept that I kind of developed in Berlin. The idea is, like, if you go to a wedding and there's a pasta station at a wedding, that's the easiest way for me to explain it. The whole idea of a pasta station is to add excitement and add smell and the ambiance and all that to the meal. And yeah, I had tremendous success with it in Berlin. Primarily, in the high school is the easiest. In most cafeterias, most school cafeterias, the high school has the best physical setup for that. The engagement with the students is there, and they can come through. So yeah, I mean, we are going to definitely look into it. I'm definitely going to move forward with that, definitely between Conard and Hall, and then see what I can, how we can fit it in at the middle schools. But it is a concept that I started there, and then, it went on to paninis, and it went on to stir fries and all those kind of things. And it gave me time to be out there in front, talking with the students, getting them engaged, and just some excitement. I put my chef jacket on, and, it makes it fun. So yeah, we're definitely be moving forward with that.
Wonderful, thanks. We're looking forward to it. Welcome to West Hartford.
Thank you.
Mark, you and I had gone to the high school Conard to have a lunch with the students, and when this progresses, maybe some of us from the board could visit one day and enjoy a meal with this new presentation at the school. So keep us in mind.
Oh, that'd be great. Sure.
Come visit Sarah and I.
And I just have a comment. I'd just like to, first of all, welcome. I think it would be wonderful over time, when you've had time to get here, to also speak to elementary students, only because I think it'd be wonderful if they start to buy and are excited at a younger level that they continue. Instead of, once you start taking lunches when you're younger, you kind of continue that trend. And I'd love to hear ideas later, what you may have for the elementary level as well. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Those are exciting ideas. So all those in favor of approving that the West Hartford Public Schools recertify the State of Connecticut Healthy Food Certification for 2017-18, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Welcome. Moving on. Recommendation that the Board of Education adopt a revised 2017-18 budget of the $159,857,754 by reducing $300,000 from the following accounts in the previously adopted 17-18 budget of Board of Education budget. Again, these are in our books: 5113 library media salaries, 5345 people transportation, 5381 heating, and 5382 electricity. Have a motion? Second. Thank you. Mr. Moore, can you help us understand these changes?
Sure. I'll let Chip go through the changes by category, but as you know, the town council adopted their budget. They cut $300,000 further from the Board of Education budget, and rather than go back and try to revote on things that weren't cut, we tried to find a way to do this to keep it as far from the students as possible. And it's difficult, but I'll let Chip explain the exact numbers.
So when you adopted the budget, there were a series of assumptions that were included in that budget. So the first was with the elimination of the library media department supervisor position, that person would then become a library media specialist. That person has now decided to retire, and then that would bump out a library media specialist, and we would just save that teacher's salary. Well, now we're not, that person's going to retire, so we're going to save all of the library media specialist salary, so it's an additional $60,000 savings. As well, we've been reaching out to our various vendors, and so we reached agreement in April 18th with our, we reached out to both transportation vendors, and we talked about a variety of different options to reduce our budgets. And so with specialty, we were able to reach an agreement where we got a freeze for 2 years, 17-18 and 18-19, and then smaller increases in the out years than what we're currently experiencing. The vendor was very understanding of our fiscal situation, and was very interested in trying to extend his contract, because his contract is up next year, and so we've extended it for additional 5 years, and we're happy with the contract at a substantially lower cost, $75,000 in the first year, more in the subsequent years, because I don't think 18-19 is going to be much better than 17-18 was. And then the final things are the balance of the $300,000 cuts was just a reduction in our contribution to the Utility Services Fund. So Utility Services Fund is projected to have a balance of around $150,000. Looking at current trends, I think we're going to be okay. We're not going to exceed that amount of money. So we dropped roughly $164,000 out of the Utility Services Fund, and it's split roughly 40% heating and 25% heating and 75% electricity, because that's just a reflection of the nature of our expenses. It's roughly 25% heat, most of it's electricity. So that's how we would get to the $300,000 reduction.
Thank you. Can you explain the changes in the utility services fund and how you reach those? I mean, what sort of efficiencies or different kinds of projections?
So there's, so what did we do? Probably about 6 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we used to actually budget for utilities in our actual operating budget. So in other words, we would make projections as to what our expenditures were going to be in utilities, and we would pay those bills directly out of the board's operating budget. And in 2008, gas prices went through the roof, and our heating bill went from $700,000 a year to $1.6 million a year. So those are the types of things that make it kind of difficult to budget. And so to smooth out those changes, what we did is instead of paying for the utility bills directly out of the board's appropriation, we make a fixed appropriation to the utility services fund, and then the utility services fund pays those bills. So as the as the bills go up or down, the balance in the utility services fund rises or falls. And so after the first year, we had a surplus of around $700,000. That dropped around $500,000 in the second year, dropped around $300,000 this year. We were projected to have a balance of around $160,000 at the end of this year. Looking at the pattern of expenditures for this year, utility costs have come down. They've stayed down, certainly on the heating side. We negotiated a newer price for our electricity for the next year that will save us a little bit more. Plus, we keep investing in energy efficiency, as well as so-called behind-the-meter solar, where we put solar panels up on all the roofs. As those projects gradually come online, our demand is decreasing. So we feel comfortable that we can make these reductions and not run into a deficit in the utility services fund.
Other questions? Sure.
So I just want to be clear, as I understand you. It's not that these savings existed and we just weren't looking hard enough. These are essentially new developments, like the unexpected benefit of the fact that the
Absolutely.
librarian is retiring. I mean, it's not like we were cutting something. We could have cut something else and didn't. I just want to make it clear that that is the case. Okay.
Yeah, the only piece of this that's a shift really in the utilities fund is we're living life closer to the bone. We're not planning for surpluses, and that's really our entire budget. If we have a problem mid-year, I don't know where we go, because we've already cut such a significant portion in school budgets and our curriculum office IT, so this just reflects that, really.
Can I ask, is this along the same lines as what we did with the healthcare claims? We looked at the history and we said we don't need to save as much and we should be okay?
That is, yes, except healthcare claims are going the other way.
Okay.
But essentially, yes, the healthcare claims, we don't pay thank God, we don't pay healthcare claims directly out of the appropriation. We make a contribution to the risk management fund, and that we are able to smooth that out. Not as much as I'd like to be able to smooth it out, because claims are claims, and so they've been it's been a tough year, and so we'll just have to see how that goes. But fundamentally, it's the same thing. As we get more information at a later date, we can update this information.
Chip, when will we see, or maybe, because I'm really excited, and I don't think we've seen it yet, is the return on investment from Charter Oak with the heating and cooling system. And eventually that's got to kick in, and we're going to start saving a tremendous amount of money, hopefully. And the second is that I think everyone heard the news yesterday that the new budget, and West Hartford is now the worst hit with this particular budget. We weren't third from the bottom. We were actually the worst. What are we going to do in that event? And I know we all talked about it at our budget meeting that day, and we voted no, and here we are again looking at, the train coming through the tunnel. And we've got to be prepared for that as well.
So let me answer the easier question first. And then we'll get into the prognostication business. So in terms of total energy consumption, the old Charter Oak was 60,000 square feet. The new Charter Oak is 90,000 square feet. Our energy consumption is going to be roughly the same between the two. So there's no direct savings, but obviously we've got a much bigger building. It's air conditioned versus not air conditioned in the old Charter Oak, or not fully air conditioned in the old Charter Oak. So there's substantial energy savings in there, but it's offset by the intensity of the usage. We will see savings because we've got those nice solar panels on the roof, which are going to start reducing, which will, this will be the first full year. So that's part of the reason why we're able to make those adjustments downward. The governor's budget was just a philosophical statement, is all it was. I mean, he's not running for re-election. No one liked his first budget, and he doubled down in his next budget. But he has basically a philosophical statement. He's not going to let Hartford go bankrupt, as near as I can tell. So, and he's got to adjust for the fact that he doesn't want to increase taxes, he doesn't want to let Hartford go bankrupt, and he wants to spend his money on the poorest cities. That's his philosophical statement. We're going to see I don't know what we saw from the Democrats today. It almost didn't add up. The Republicans haven't even put anything forward, so if I were a betting man, I think we'll be back here and have at least 2 board meetings under our belt before there'll be anything coming out of Hartford in terms of what the final decision is going to be.
You're thinking September we'll have.
Oh, yeah.
So how does that affect, I guess, the town, because we're under charter and we have to have a budget set in by July 1st or June 30, whatever that date may be. So if in September, say, maybe it's not a full 25 million, it's $10 million that we have to come up with additional resources, and how is that? Is that do we have to restart the budget again? How does that work? What's the framework behind that?
Well, so the way the charter the way the charter works is written, our budget is set. In other words, we have the budget, the town's got the budget, the mill rate has been set. So everything has been set. So if there is a reduction in revenue to the town, barring any budget implementer, it's a reduction in revenue to the town. They thought they were going to get X millions of dollars, they're going to get Y millions of dollars. That said, there might be, who knows what they're going to do. There might be enabling legislation that says, okay, in addition to reducing this revenue, yeah, you can, because the town is fundamentally an entity of the state. It's just a subdivision of the state. So the state can override whatever's in our charter and say, you can do this, you can raise taxes, you could cut the budget, you can do almost anything. I don't know what that's going to look like. That's a political decision and a political calculation. If I were a betting man, I don't even know what to say. I cannot prognosticate.
If
on this.
I was just in a meeting with Hartford area superintendents, and I mean, if you look around, there may be areas that have a lower percentage increase in their Board of Education budget. But when you take roll forward, we have the biggest cuts of anyone. Pure dollars, you don't see $2.5 million cut in other places you go around. So the issue is 169 cities and towns. We weren't alone in our assumptions that we made when we passed our budget. And now, what percentage of towns have passed their budget? 90%.
I mean, Hartford, I think, is the only one of the few that's left.
So it's difficult for me to understand how they could go back to the 169 cities and towns that already have budgets and completely throw the state into another round of fiscal chaos. I'm not saying they won't. I've taken all bets off the table, but it is.
Well, I mean, all the betting that we've done here tonight, because we've done a lot of betting so far as betting men, no one thought we'd see this budget that he passed yesterday, because we all betted that wouldn't even show up again. But here it is.
Well,
The only thing I'll say in my betting was, I just said the legislature won't pass Governor Malloy's proposed budget.
No,
And I
understood.
still stick with they won't pass his
And I
new proposed
probably
budget.
bet you're right.
Yeah.
And so we might come out ahead. But I just, I didn't anticipate him coming back, and I don't think, maybe none of us did, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I did not anticipate after the legislature knocked down that first budget, for him to come back with even bigger cuts. to the school system. So I was kind of just perplexed by that, and don't really, obviously he's not running for office, so it doesn't, all bets are off the table with that one. But I'm still scared, quite honestly, with what can potentially happen to not only West Hartford, but the rest of the state.
Can I just add that as a non-betting woman, that last year, they just cut something in like October, right? They just said, poof, we're getting rid of ECS funding or whatever it was, and we just had to deal with it. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just, whenever they decide, they just implement it, and then we'll have to figure it out.
Well, no, well, that was different. That was the governor's has certain rescissionary authority on ECS, so he could cut the ECS budget by 2% or something like that. I mean, he had specific statutory authority to do that. They're going to have to pass statutorily, they have to pass a balanced budget. I mean, which either means one of three things. They're going to raise taxes a lot, they're going to cut aid to cities and towns a lot, or they're going to eliminate a lot of services that the state provides. Or they're going to fudge the revenue. I don't know what they're going to do.
Or they're going to do some new revenue, which they seem to refuse to do also.
I don't think they're
That's
going
a
to. I don't
political
know what they're going to
conversation.
do. I don't know what they're going to do.
All right, so let's continue the prognostication conversation afterwards, but I appreciate it. Thanks for these thoughts. Any other comments or questions about the recommendation on the reduction, the proposed reduction? Well, first, thanks to all of you for putting this together. So I may have all those in favor of adopting a revised 2017-18 budget by reducing the $300,000 in the accounts 25113, 5345, 5381, and 5382. Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I want to just take a moment here. I'm sorry I didn't mention at the beginning to acknowledge Jay Sarzen's absence today. His father passed away this morning, and our thoughts go with him and to his family. We send him much strength and love, and we miss him here at the table tonight. We wish him all the best. Okay. We'll move on from this to staff communications and reports. Mr. Moore, Superintendent's report.
Sure. A few things as we reach closer, and this is the penultimate meeting towards the end of the year. The first thing I want to remind people of, June 1st, June 2nd, Unified Theater at Conard. If you go to one event in West Hartford Public Schools, I've always said that is the one I would choose to go to. Remarkable evening, and impossible to describe till you've been there, so absolutely attend if you can. Ronnie Newton published a nice story with pictures in WeHa.com of our PE strategies class at the Yard Goats game this week, and throwing out the first pitch, and some great kids there that really enjoyed the day, and we thank the Yard Goats, and we thank Ronnie for her coverage, because it was a great day. Our mentor breakfast was this morning, a packed house with dozens of our mentors that come in and work with our kids every day in our buildings to try to make their lives better, and it's a small thank you, but they deserve big thanks, all of the people that come in to work with our kids, just to let our kids know there's another adult out there that cares about them, and it's one of the great partnerships we have in West Hartford Public Schools, as we'll be talking about that tonight. Kindergarten registrations are active, underway, meetings going on, and you know, we want to remind people, please make sure you get in. The sooner we get accurate numbers, the more helpful it will be for us as we plan out our classes this summer. I do want to point out one thing that Cheryl and I spoke about, because Cheryl had a really interesting question on the number of outplacements at the last meeting, because it did seem like a high number, and we were trying to figure it out here, and then, as often happens when we leave the next day, it's like, that's why. The number appeared large, and it was too large because when the state does accountability systems for our high schools, Hall and Conard are high schools, and Reach and Strive are high schools. So anybody that goes from Hall or Conard out is considered an outplacement. So that's what skews those numbers. So it's not out of district, but it's out of their district in the state's mind. And yet another thing that the state does that is odd. Thursday night, we mentioned Teacher of the Year at our last board meeting. Thursday night, the Teacher of the Year will be named and at the WHEA banquet, which is a yearly event. And then lastly, I want to talk about, because we've talked about our exchanges over the years and things that we do during the summer. And from June 14th through June 19th, 19 students combined from Hall and Conard, and 2 chaperones will be visiting the Shanghai Foreign Language School to study both Chinese language and culture. This unique opportunity is a full immersion experience as students will be in classes at the school and living in the dorms on the school campus. Students will be in morning class, improving their Chinese language school skills, as well as learning about different aspects of Chinese culture. The afternoons are filled with excursions in and around Shanghai, where students will be able to apply the knowledge that they learned in the classroom. Students and chaperones will also spend 4 days in the city of Chengdu exploring another area of China and using their language skills. So this is a program we've partnered with them. We've talked about their kids coming here and being in our school, so this is our return trip. So that's very exciting and happening in a month from now. So,
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions for Mr. Moore? Thank you. Moving on to staff reports and discussions. Up first of 3, the Hall High School Science Lab update. Welcome back, Mr. Palmer. Long time no see. It's always nice to have you at the table. Dr. Morrow.
Bob missed coming to board meetings, so we created another project after Charter Oak so that he could come. So I'll let Dr. Morrow.
We recycled the Charter Oak presentation that's been given over the years and updated it for Hall High School, so. Yes, so, no, this is a box. This is a simple box. Nothing?
Does this mean our IT budget is being trimmed now? Chip is folding in.
Yep. We're having to make do.
You guys, this is looking good, guys, right?
F4?
No, that's the microphone. That's the thing that.
Okay.
I'll get it. I'll get it eventually.
Okay.
Keep going. Just keep going.
Okay. So again, you have the papers and can follow along while we try and get this going. For those at home, it's a wonderful presentation. We wanted to come and give you an update, as you know, because we've been working on it for about a year, for the Hall Science Lab update. And we wanted to come and give you a presentation on this to let you know where we are before the summer, because we will be starting some preliminary site work over the summer. And so I'll turn it over to Bob, who can sort of walk through our scope and our process and share where we are and where we're headed over the next year and a half.
As you recall, about a year ago, you voted and approved on a science lab addition and renovation for Hall High School. The plan that we've come up with is to have a 2-story addition of 8 classrooms, 4 chemistry and 4 biology. These are combination classrooms and labs, which are termed as CLABs. Okay, that's where the CLAB comes in. So, in addition to that, there's a existing 8 CLABs in the existing building in the B wing on the 2nd floor. Those would be renovated into 6 classrooms for earth science and physics. And the whole idea about putting the chemistry and biology in a new building is those are very mechanical intensive classrooms. So there's ventilation hoods, gas lines, water, sinks, and all that. So it's much easier to do that as new construction versus trying to renovate an old building and retrofit it to that. The earth science and physics are much lighter on the mechanicals. We don't have hoods in those facilities. We don't have natural gas. It's really some sinks and lab benches. So it's a much easier way to do it. So that's really the general type of plan that we've come up with here for this project. The project budget is $12.8 million. There's a state grant that gives us an $8 million reimbursement on this project. That gives us a little bit over 60%. That was due to special legislation from our West Hartford legislative delegation, got us that special grant. Our typical reimbursement right now is 39% from the state. So this is it's a very good deal for us. Any project that we build in the town over $2 million has a LEED Gold requirement. This is very similar to what we did at Charter Oak. We have to follow certain guidelines in order to make it environmentally sustainable and to focus on energy usage and lifetime costs for the building. This is going to be difficult to achieve for this building, with especially the new building, because of the high ventilation rates that are required for science labs. So we're gonna struggle on that, and we're starting to see a little bit of that, but we're attempting to do that. Again, it's very difficult with science labs. It's a very specialized kind of field, but we're moving forward with that.
Bob, can I interrupt? What are the consequences if the LEED Gold isn't achieved?
There's no consequences, I don't believe. We will be in contact with the town energy task force and communicate our struggles with them if we are struggling with that. But our conversations with our mechanical engineers so far has said it's going to be difficult to do, but we're working on it and getting towards it. The LEED requirements also have, since we built Charter Oak, even in the last 2 years, have become more stringent. So it's harder to obtain that. And again, with science labs, it's even harder. So. Okay.
Bob, is it because of the ventilation, so you're inputting, say, air conditioning, you're taking it out with the ventilation? Or
Correct, because you have hoods that run 24/7. Your science labs hoods have to run 24/7 in order to ventilate any potential chemicals, and also your chemical storage areas are ventilated 24/7. So you're constantly 24/7, 365, bringing in fresh air, heating or cooling that air to keep it at the right temperature, so your energy consumption is good. So, you can overcome it, but there's some pretty sophisticated things that have to happen. You're wrong slide. So we're slated for construction to begin late this fall in 2017. That would begin on the new addition. We'll talk a little bit where that's going to be. And that would be completed in December of 2018. So it'll be about a year of full construction for that. The renovation will be what we call a summer slammer. It'll be the summer of 2018. We're going to go in there and just work like crazy to take 8 labs, make them into 6, and make it all beautiful. So it's going to be pretty intensive, but we're pretty confident we can achieve that. So as you know, in a capital project process, there's a team involved. There's a building committee. Myself, Dr. Morrow, the principal, Dan Zeton, the science chairman, department supervisor at Hall is Mike Rollins, and we've had a lot of teacher involvement in this as well, and some town staff as well. So the architect for the project is JCJ out of Hartford. They've been excellent. We've had really been very impressed with them. We went through a selection process. We had lots of great firms to choose from. They really came in with a good, solid record of experience in science labs and recent science labs, which we really liked, and we're appreciating that at this point. We just recently hired the construction manager. It's a familiar name to us. It's Fusco Corporation, who built Charter Oak. Again, we had lots of great candidates, lots of great companies that came in and to choose from, but we did decide to go with Fusco again, and we're very confident with that, based on our success at Charter Oak and also their abilities to provide in building science labs. They have a lot of experience in that too. So the design process and construction, I'm not going to go through each one of these steps here, but right now we've completed the programming. That involved a lot of meetings with defining the program, meeting with the science department faculty, and planning out what the labs need to have as essential elements and what they really needed for space. And so we did a lot of that. They've been very active and involved in the whole process of programming and also into schematic design. At this point, we're just about finishing up schematic design, and we'll go into design development where we begin to really finalize those plans, kind of putting pen to paper, looking at the project, and working out any of the bugs that we potentially see. Then we'll go into construction documents and then bidding and construction eventually later during the summer and then into the fall. Again, we're anticipating a late fall construction start for the new addition, and then the renovation would again be next summer, 2018. So at the same time, we're also working with several different agencies on the approval process. We have the land use. We have to go through the town plan and zoning process. That will be this summer. We'll begin the civic engagement and engagement with the neighborhoods. We try to be good neighbors when we're doing a construction project, but we are going to disrupt their lives, as we always do. So, and yeah, we've already had some inquiries from the neighbors as there's been some survey work going on out there, and they've inquired already as to what's going on. So, we're also working with State Office of Construction Grants very closely, and we'll all continue to work with the local building and health departments as we've done in the past. So I'm going to give you some idea of what we've come up with so far as part of our schematic programming.
Sorry, Bob, another question
Yep.
en route is this material, as before with Charter Oak, will be on the website, so neighborhood folks
Yes,
can check it
yep,
out.
we'll begin that process, yep. So one of the things is that where we're placing our new addition is going to be in the existing bus loop, adjacent to the modular classrooms. So one of the things we have to think about is where are we putting how are we going to redesign the traffic flow? So, and some of our objectives in this is not to go into the neighborhood. So we want to stay off of Hyde Road. We don't want to put bus traffic or anything like that or any more traffic into that neighborhood. So, so what we've really come up with is really just shifting the whole bus drop-off to the east side of the building. We would create a turnaround circle kind of right where the modular classrooms are right now, and we would double stack the buses for the afternoon pickup, as you can see in this diagram. In the morning drop-off, we don't think it would be a problem. They come in staggered enough that they would just drop off single file. So that's really one of the changes that we're looking at doing. There is a slight modification, is that we would take the minibuses that currently line up on the east side of the building and move those over to the west side. And those would come in off of Hyde Road. I think it's about 10 minibuses that do that. We'd also provide a very direct lane for them to separate them from parent drop-off traffic. As we go through and do projects at schools, we're very conscious of doing that, separating bus traffic, parent traffic, and teachers and staff that are parking. So we're continuing to work on that and refine this. So this is our proposed plan at this point. Again, there's still lots of discussion to have. We still have to present this to town plan and zoning, get approvals from the town. We also have to do some neighborhood outreach and talk to people about it at this point. But this is really the draft plan. And this has been a lot of discussions with the school community on what would best serve them and how to improve the circulation on the site as it is right now. So. Any question? Yep.
Yep, Bob. It's hard to read where the buses are, the future bus on the east side. I see the turnaround, but is there enough space there with the parking? Are you removing the parking there?
We expand the parking lot a little bit by 4 feet to shift over, so that to create a third lane there, so the buses can double queue like that and still have a passing lane.
And then still come out?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And then you're looking to do additional parking over by the tennis courts?
Yeah, because we are stealing some spots from that lot off of Hyde Road, we would be adding some additional parking onto that other lot. Yeah.
And where on the west side where the minibuses come in, where would the dedicated line be on the in portion of that? You know, because when you come in off of Hyde, all the parents come that way.
Yeah, the traffic would be mixed up to the point of where you get into that special drop-off lane for the minibuses, and the parents would break off.
Is that minibus line, that is an additional space?
Yes, that would be created.
Created there.
Right.
There's additional lane. So it would cut into the lawn a little bit there, to the existing lawn.
Yep, hi.
Hi, I just had a question about, with the front lot, I know like, especially in the morning, with like parents dropping off kids and then like kids also having that's where like students park in that front lot. As long as it's being like renovated in a way, I was wondering if there's anything that like could be kept in mind regarding like trying to get like some sort of flow, because when like parents drop off kids like by the front curb, then it like slows up the entire line to just like get kids into and being able to park. So just like something like keep in mind to maybe like make a separate lane or something.
Well, this gives us an opportunity as we're going through on this, and anytime we're redesigning traffic flow, we'll work with police and we'll work with our security and make sure that we're doing what's best and what's the best for the flow. We've actually gone ahead in this already in trying to figure out where people are coming in and out. We've actually done some aerial footage. We've had Eric Dempsey flying a drone during drop-off and pickup, so we can actually see where those traffic patterns are in real time. And so that's something that we'll continue to do before we go ahead and make modifications.
And as part of the project, we're required to do a traffic study anyhow. Anyway, so we have an engineering firm engaged doing traffic counts. They're also out there observing.
There's a lot of traffic.
Yes, it is very busy.
Yeah, it's a very condensed site. There's
You
a
know,
lot of traffic.
on the southwest side, you know, that traffic goes all the way back, I think, to Karen Lane and
Correct.
all that. It flows, and it flows well, but I mean, it's just, there's a lot of
It's a
traffic.
very congested site, and so part of the reason for us in relocating that bus loop where it is to avoid any of the congestion that would be coming out over near the back where we're going to be blocking it off for a year and a half for construction.
So two related traffic driving questions. One is there a state regulation or mandate about the number of parking spots we have as a percentage of the total population in the unit?
There's guidelines that engineers would use based on the building occupancy as to how many parking spots you would provide.
Right, and
Right.
it strikes
That's-
me, I raised this with the Charter Oak, it strikes me as an opportunity to have a conversation about incentives not to drive to school, especially one kid per car. I mean, for a variety of reasons, including, you know, environmental and other range of things. Anyway, wondering if we should think about that.
Yeah, we did just begin the lead meetings the other day on the project, and one of the ideas was to establish incentive parking areas for people who do carpool, so they would be closer to the building, so, right.
And then I just had another question regarding, this has to do kind of with sports, is that when we have like games that are away or even practice, all of the buses pick us up from like that front student lot area, and which is a lot closer to the locker rooms than the back or like the side, I guess. So how would that work? Would the buses for sports still pick up in the front?
Yeah, I think it would remain the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
On a similar kind of note, first of all, I take your point about the environment, but it does seem to me that these are opportunities to widen some spaces that are crowded. But in that light, rather than lining them up 2 by 2, the buses, I mean, now I see what you mean by
Double
stacking
stacking,
them.
right.
Because if the third bus is ready to leave and the second bus, right, then it's stuck. So my question is there any way to spread it out a little bit? I mean, to widen the space a little bit so it's a little bit more like Port Authority, you know, where everybody's got their own little slants?
We did look at that in an earlier version. Unfortunately, we have that hill there, and that becomes very expensive to build into, so.
The consultants and such, we think that this will be the best fit. Remember also that being the first stop at the high school, at least currently until we change start times, being the first stop means that the buses can actually stage there and line up in an order every day in a sequence, and so we can get them used to a certain sequence. So we think that'll work best.
Is there any potential thought of busing out to Hyde Road at all, or is that completely like off the table because it's a neighborhood?
You mean as far as,
you know, like instead of
taking
that
the buses
circle,
out
having
that
an
way?
additional exit there?
We looked into that. The difficulty there is some of the angles then onto Hyde Road, and then you're just dispersing and causing even more of a traffic issue. The other concern we have is for a year and a half, we're going to be having that area blocked off for some construction issues. So we looked at actually having the existing loop cut through and exit onto Hyde Road, and we just don't think logistically it's the best fit.
I know this is opening a can of worms, but just curious while we're throwing out ideas, instead of having so many people again drive, is there any way of looking at potentially busing more students there so there is less driving, less cars involved? I know state guidelines, but I thought I would ask.
Not without increasing the transportation costs and changing the state guidelines for both Hall and for Conard. mean, it's within, if you'd like, if we can certainly look at that, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure that the issue is kids driving there because they're not on the bus. I think it's a lot of students driving there because they'd like to drive to school and such.
I concur with that. That's true.
Thank you.
And I knew the answer to that, but I thought I'd ask. Okay.
And unfortunately, also that's when you're also dealing with then juniors and seniors, many of whom it's not legal for them to carpool, and so you have single use visits as well. So we can encourage it as much as we can with neighborhoods and with parents, but for many of the kids who are newly licensed for 6 months afterwards, or it's a year now, for a year. Oh, that's right. So a year they cannot drive others. So.
All right, let's move on.
All right, we okay with this?
Good. Go ahead. Right, go ahead. Yep. Okay, so we're going to talk about what the addition is going to look like, and it's really kind of a simple square rectangular kind of building. The first floor or ground floor would have 4 classrooms, and these would be the biology. No circles, no. No circles. So it would be 4 classrooms of the CLABs. They would share a prep space in between each classroom, and they would also have hoods that are double-sided. So it would go from the classroom into the prep room, which reduces the number of hoods that we need to have. So that's kind of an innovative design. We also have a chemical storage room located here, and that's the gray area. We worked very hard with the faculty to come up with a classroom layout that works for them. We visited 4 other schools. We went to Enfield, Glastonbury, Clinton, and Guilford high schools, and looked at, those are all recent laboratory renovation projects or new construction, and took a look at those to get some ideas of what people have been doing, and we borrowed a lot of ideas from those facilities, what's working. We talked to faculty and administrators at all those districts as well, and got some good input onto what works well and things they would have tweaked or changed in their designs. But so this is really the collaborative result of all that. Is these classroom layouts, and it gives them adequate space to have the classroom function, but it also gives them enough room to do the laboratory work that they need to do, and it's in a very efficient and functional layout. These classrooms are about 1,300 square feet in size. Currently, the labs at Hall range anywhere from 900 to 1,100. They're small. They're undersized for today's standards, and they're ancient, but besides that, but they are small, and it's very difficult. And it would also have all the modern technology and safety systems and everything else in them that they would require. So
will we be renovating the older classrooms and turning them into different use?
That's to come.
Yep, we got a slide on that too, right?
No, we tried.
No.
It costs more than $12.8 million.
Yes. So we would also provide, we will be connecting the building at both floors to the main building. So the ground floor, first floor would connect on the cafeteria level, and then the second floor would connect on the second level, which is where the majority of the science rooms are right now. So there's a very adjacency and connectivity to this, which works out very nicely with this addition.
Excuse me, on that subject, the connectors, they're like the hallways like the ones that exist now?
Yep. Correct. Yep, exactly, yeah. So it would be 2 stories. Yep. So the second floor of the addition would be the chemistry classrooms. It's very efficient. Again, we're stacking the classrooms right on top of each other to take advantage of mechanical systems. The restrooms, again, are stacked on top of each other, just, again, taking advantage of the mechanicals. We have 2 stairwells. Again, we have a connector hallway that would bring them over to the second floor, where the earth science and physics classrooms would be. It's a very similar setup. We have shared space in between for prep lab and also teacher workstations. The classrooms are arranged in a similar fashion. We have a little bit of space for teacher collaboration and break rooms, that type of thing, in those spaces. So
Is there an advantage having the chemistry on the second floor versus, because it's less hood work? Is there any versus biology?
yeah, but chemistry, you're doing way more ventilation. So Right.
Right,
Go right
so
on.
it's, okay, good.
By design.
And so for the renovation of the existing building, where we're taking the 8 existing laboratories in the B wing, which are on the exterior of the building, and there's a middle section that we're not going to be renovating. So those would become earth science and physics. There's 4 earth science classrooms and 2 physics classrooms. The physics classrooms are on the right-hand side of your diagram. And they have a shared storage room in the middle of that. And then there's the 4 earth science classrooms. And again, similar ideas is that we have shared prep spaces for each of these. Again, the mechanicals are not as intensive here. We don't have hoods or anything like that. It's really just plumbing. Right. And then we were able to carve out a little bit of space. You'll see these pink areas here. These are going to be student collaboration areas, which is kind of a nice bonus that we're able to do here. And this is going to be utilized by science, but also open to other departments within the high school. So and this would be the summer of 2018. This would be available for next September for students. We will be short some labs during that first semester as we continue to do the construction on the new addition, which won't be completed until after the first semester. The faculty and Mike Rollins, the department supervisor, are good with that. They understand that. They're being really cooperative and helpful and are able to work around that, so, and accommodate the construction schedule. So.
Can I ask about the layout briefly? 2 questions, actually. The first is, I see that the layout is slightly different on the end size than the other. Are there pedagogical reasons or anything for different layouts to prefer one or the other, or is it just a space question? Is one
No,
more
it's
suited for-
pedagogical. That's what the science people want.
Okay, and that's
Yeah,
great.
right.
No,
And
the
then
physics rooms are more of a traditional.
Well,
Right.
and that in a way is the second part of the question. I know at Trinity, one thing they're doing is they're experimenting with a new physics curriculum, which is much more collaborative. And so they've redesigned the classroom to be more shared spaces and cluster areas. Is this area flexible enough that if you wanted to move things around, you could?
Yeah, all the furniture is movable.
Okay.
Teacher stations included, so none of these teacher stations are going to be permanent, and even in the bio and chemistry areas, they're not. They are, they wanted flexible workstations, and if they're doing a demo, they'll go over to a student station and do it, so. Right, so, yeah.
The temporary or portable classrooms, you may have said it, but do they?
They will remain.
They're not being affected in this.
No, they will remain. The only change that we will have is the way that you access them. The current connector will be removed, and you will access those via the new bio wing.
Enter the bio wing, then take a hard right?
Once it's
Yes.
constructed.
Once it's constructed. So
Are those portables in pretty good shape?
they're actually in really good shape. Yeah. So they're maintenance
Their life
headaches,
cycle
but
hasn't-
yeah, no, they're good. They've been, they're 14, 15 years old, the oldest ones I think at this point. So a little bit older than that maybe. But they're continuing to serve their purpose, and
We do regular upkeep on them, so,
Yep.
yeah.
And with enrollment at both of our high schools, we're stable in enrollment there for, another 6-7 years. Actually, Hall has increasing enrollment over the next couple of years, so, what's hitting the elementaries is still at 4th grade now, so we're still 5-6 years away before you begin to even see any of that at the high school.
Yeah. And part of the reason for removing the connector to the existing connector to the modular classrooms is we needed to access the cafeteria. We're cutting ourselves off from that. We were putting the new connector to the addition, so we needed to be able to get into the back for deliveries and refuge and recycling and all that other stuff. So we needed to make an access point there.
So on the construction itself, as you know, I'm an immediate neighbor of Charter Oak, and I have a special affinity for the neighbors who will be affected during this. I'm excited to see Fusco on the project because they learned, as West Hartford Public Schools learned, from the Charter Oak project. And this is kind of funny because Facebook does this thing where they show you what you posted a year ago or 2 years ago. And so I'm seeing pictures, remember this, Bob, the fence is blowing down in the beginning. Construction traffic on the side streets. You found there was a trash pit on site. I know none of that will happen because we learned from that. And I'm also aware that I brought this up twice before, so it is very important to me. But another recent one, this is almost comical, Bob's aware, and Dr. Morrow is, there's a backup generator on site. And it was in theory put in the back of the school, which is by the cafeteria. So if you're looking at the compass rose, it's off to your left there. You'll see it sometime. And it makes a lot of noise, and unfortunately it's on the residential side of the school. Somebody knew that thing made a lot of noise. We didn't. And I just wish it would have been put over on the Home Depot side where there's a lot of noise anyway. I realize that's the front of the school. Maybe it's not so beautiful. If anything like that is going to be part of this new construction, I plead with you,
Yeah.
as I hear about venting. If 24-hour venting, if there's some way to make sure the noise doesn't point at someone's house.
Okay, good points, and there's no generator going here, so that's good. And we're looking at some sound attenuation on that generator, so we'll hopefully help you with that problem, so, in the neighborhood, so, at Charter Oak.
It's
so.
a comical story we found out just by default. It's set to run a half-hour, 30-minute test cycle once a week at 12 a.m. And so it's
On
not
Wednesday,
so,
in case you're off.
On Wednesday. It's not so bad in the winter with all your windows closed, but I would imagine if it happened, you know, Bob was
But on the
kind
plus
enough.
side,
Yeah.
when we lost power 2 weeks ago on that side of town, the generator kicked in and operated flawlessly. So, there is a plus side to it.
There was. So we've learned from that. So thank you very much for keeping that in mind. And I'd just like to ask, recalling meetings that were held with the neighbors at Charter Oak, if you could keep the board informed of any neighborhood meetings.
Sure.
I know at least I'd be happy to attend.
Sure, we will.
And that'd be great. Thank you.
One
so
of the
much.
benefits also, if you remember the way that it's set up there, is that directly opposite us in Hyde Road there is the park. And so we don't really have a lot. There's a couple of near neighbors, but as far as sight lines and such, we're directly opposite the park in the rear of the school there. So it will not have a huge impact on a neighborhood look or a neighborhood design.
Great. Thank you, guys.
So my question is, because it's a year-long project, and once everything gets going, and I know construction workers, although they try to, minimize the noise, but as it gets going, will this have hopefully a small impact on the students, but in terms of learning with the different banging and drills and what have you?
Yeah, I think there will be some disruption to that backside of the building. The library looks directly at that site. And then there's the existing science rooms are also looking at that site.
And the
so-
portables.
Yeah, and the portable classrooms.
some
So
noise.
there will be, we'll work with them to minimize that, but there will be some disruption, I think, so. But I think the majority of people won't even know it, who don't have classrooms on that north-facing wall. Probably won't even know what's going on, so.
With just schematics, are there any design features you have intended for this because it's a new science lab, any science, sciencey,
No, I think it's going to be pretty basic. We're not.
Pretty
There's no real bells and whistles on this at this point. There might be some interesting things in the physics labs that hang from the ceiling and allow them to do things. We're not quite sure how that's going to all play out at this point. So
Some of the different tracks and such.
yeah,
that
and
allow
pulleys
for
and
pulleys
that type of thing. So there might be some of that, but it's going to be state of the art, modern,
Clean design.
clean
It'll
design,
be
right? And
Fairly basic.
it'll be very different from what Sarah's been experiencing. Yeah. So,
Just in the spirit of not being a betting woman, what are the chances that the $8 million are at risk?
I
think it's pretty minimal.
It was in last year's.
Yeah, it was in it's in special legislation implementer bill,
So it's a year ago.
and I think anything's possible, but it's not in a budgeted line item at this stage. It was special legislation, so for them to remove that specifically, they'd have to go after that specifically, so.
Is it, I thought we had asked this question before, and I think the discussion or answer was, it was similar to the Charter Oak, whereas that it was already allocated and they couldn't remove the money, as I remember, and I'm getting
Well, they
older.
can remove it by going by, they could go back and take away the allocation, but it would have to be a specific act.
Well,
It's
allocation
not a
and
part.
legislation,
Yeah,
too.
there's
It's already
no
been
ask
encumbered.
left for this, and this wasn't just an allocation, this was legislation. So they'd have to pass new legislation
To specifically
to
take it away.
specifically rescind that legislation. It was part of the end of the year, the last.
Let's
bill.
not give them too many ideas.
Yeah,
Maybe we
I
should.
know.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Watch just like hawks. Anything else, folks? All right, Mr. Palmer, Dr. Morrow, always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for this. Look forward to the next update. Welcoming families to the lens of equity. Dr. Rosina Haskins and Ms. Harry Jones will report. Thanks very much. Yeah, of course. Do you guys want to do your updates now? Can we put you guys on hold for just a sec? We're going to have updates, and then you just have to go do some study prep. Is that correct? Okay, so take it away. We'll skip to the end, and then we'll turn it over to our guests.
Okay, so last Saturday, so May 13th, was junior prom, and Mr. Zatoon, quote, said it was a very happy and smooth event from start to bottom. And today was fictional character day, and which is the senior acting classes. They dress up and they're full on in character from the start of school to the end of the school day. And there's Mary Poppins, there's Alexander the Great, there was Eloise, and so many more. And they really do an excellent job. And then tomorrow, the junior acting classes are doing their painting project. So they're all set up in like different areas around the school, and they're literally acting out a painting all day. So that's either really entertaining for them all day or really not all day. And then tomorrow is awards night in the auditorium at 7:30. On Sunday is the Celesti Spring Showcase at 7 o'clock. And also on Sunday is the Voce and Acapella concert, which is the select boys and girls acapella groups. And then on May 23rd is the Instrumental Spring Concert. And then the art show's opening on May 24th. And then senior outing is on May 31st to go to Six Flags. That's all for now.
From the other side of town, the Me and CCMC event will be occurring at Moe's on the 23rd, and it's going to help fundraise for the CCMC to build their new infusion center. Our softball coach, Tom Varengio, was honored as the 2017 CHSCA Coach of the Year. He's an amazing guy. He does awesome work with our special ed kids, and everyone looks up to him. It's great. And then last week, Conard Boys Lacrosse won over the undefeated Summers team, and our girls lacrosse defeated South Windsor. Last week, as was mentioned by Mr. Moore, a lot of our special education students in PE strategies were able to go down to the Yard Goat Stadium. They were able to get on the Jumbotron and get some baseballs, so it was really cool. Over the weekend, Conard Model United Nations was in New York City, and we competed in multiple different committees as the country of Indonesia. It was a very fun weekend, and at the closing ceremonies that were actually held in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, we took home an honorable mention award as well as a country statement award. And Conard received 46 honorable mentions and 36 medal winners on the National French exam, doubling the numbers from last year. We had 3 gold medal winners, which means that they were in the top 95th percentile of the country, 14 silver medal winners, which means they were in the 85th or 90th percentile in the country, and 19 bronze medal winners, which means they were in the 75th or 80th percentile. And we will be having our spring concert on Wednesday and our Jazzmatazz Spring Jazz Concert on Saturday. Thank you.
I also forgot to mention that Coach John McClure won the Connecticut Girls Swimming Coach of the Year, and I've had him for 4 years. He's a fantastic coach. I'm surprised he doesn't win it every single year. Great person.
Congratulations to all those winners and awardees, and thank you all. Good luck with your exams. Make us proud. All right. Speaking of making us proud, over to you all. Welcome.
We're teachers. So, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share with the board and the viewing public our district's efforts to promote welcoming schools and our aim to engage families as critical partners in education. It is one of our core values that we subscribe to, and it's something, it's not new, but it's something that we aim to enhance and strengthen so that we never become complacent. So I'm pleased that this evening, joining me here at the board table is Carrie Jones. You know her as our Director for Elementary Education. And Jessica Lloyd is joining us tonight. She's a parent with 3 children in the district through the Open Choice Program, and she supports our vision for Clear Paths. So we're happy to have her here for you to hear parent perspective. And also not at the table tonight, but deserving of acknowledgement and recognition is Amy Yarborough. She's here in the audience. And she's our Open Choice Family Engagement Consultant, and she works tirelessly to reach out to the community, to parents, and she has such a welcoming and approachable demeanor that she serves us so well in her role. And then also, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the principals who really should be here at the table themselves, because Carrie and I are just representing their systemic work and everything that's reflected in their school development plan when it comes to welcoming schools, being a welcoming school, and family engagement. So we have prepared an agenda. We've prepared a presentation that will focus largely on family engagement from a global perspective, but also looking at it here in West Hartford Public Schools through an equity lens, so through an equity perspective based on 5 progressive principles. And tonight we'll also highlight some of our efforts, but we know that we're not perfect and we always strive to do better. So while we have our points of pride, we're going to highlight some of our needs, areas for growth, because we want to be candid about that and transparent about that too, and hope that we can engage our families in doing the work as well. So family engagement, I mean, this is just a global view of family engagement. And here, the shift here from maybe 20, 25 years ago, maybe even a decade, is how we view families, the makeup of families. We're no longer calling it parent engagement, but it's family engagement. And what's the makeup of family? And how do we look for families to be engaged? So I'll share this quote here. And this quote is by Dr. Karen Mapp. She's a consultant for the U.S. Department of Education on family engagement, and she's developed a framework that really looks at 5 key factors to strong family and school partnerships. And, you know, basically a theory of action is if you do these things, these are the effective results that you'll get. And what this framework does is it broadens our view of family engagement being beyond the bake sale, beyond just being in the classroom and volunteering. And while that's important too, it's much broader than that. So I want to talk a little bit about the Equity and Diversity Council, because they're essentially the folks that are helping us to do the heavy lifting and, you know, move this work forward. And so essentially we exist, the Equity and Diversity Council, EDC, exists to really examine our programs, our policies, and our practices to leverage what we do well to serve everybody and to just advance opportunities and access to opportunities for each and every student. So we have 5 priorities that we've identified. We've talked in the past, we've talked more recently about just diversity in our staff, building capacity for cultural competency, and leveraging access and opportunities by building capacity in our staff and for cultural competence. But tonight our focus is more on family engagement and our partnerships with our families. And so two of our subcommittees really focus on the open choice experience and enhancing the open choice experience for all. That is a subcommittee. And then family engagement is another subcommittee. And actually their work aligns with our school goals, our district goals, but it intersects so much that they've merged as a subcommittee this year. And they're doing some really exciting work. So given the framework that I just described by Dr. Mapp, family engagement, this is the result of what we want. This is the definition that we share and subscribe to here in the West Hartford Public Schools with the Equity and Diversity Council. They've largely come to some agreement and consensus about what we want and how we want family engagement to look in our district. And so there are 5 progressive principles of family engagement. And you'll see, if you notice, one, the first principle, it's really talking about the necessary one-way communication that we have to have, that sharing of information. We got to get that information to you. But then there's also that, that shifting. So 1 and 2 is that one way. But then 3 represents that shifting of two-way conversations, two-way communication, information sharing through a variety of mediums, through a variety of platforms, rather than just newsletters going home or emails. And then 4 and 5, it's just really fostering dialogue, and 5 being looking at who's at the table. I look now at who's in our Equity and Diversity Council. We have a growing parent-family representation in our Equity and Diversity Council. So we want families to feel like they have a voice at the table, and we hope that Jessica feels that way too. So I'm going to share my airtime with Carrie because she's going to illustrate how we operationalize those principles here at West Hartford Public Schools.
So the report itself had many more details than we'll highlight this evening, so we'll just highlight a couple of key areas, and particularly those areas of need and growth. And it's critical, the first step to this work is to take that family engagement definition and these 5 principles and make sure we have a shared understanding across all of our schools, among our families, among our staff, so that we are not making assumptions. We're looking at biases we may have, our own definitions of what family engagement means or has meant to us in the past, both from a parent lens and a staff lens. So it's critical as a first step to any of this work that we have this work of the EDC be shared out with staff, certainly by the start of the next school year as we develop school goals, department-based goals related to families and school climate. So that's a necessary first step. And with each of these principles, we said, the EDC and Rosina and our colleagues, Amy and parents and I, said, what are some examples of where we're already seeing some of these principles in place? What's the work that's already there that exemplifies these principles, and where do we need to move? Where are our growth areas? So for the first principle around welcoming schools, it's part of our school development plans. Every school, even my department, considers family engagement and how we're welcoming families and students into our school climates. So it's part of what we do, but certainly we've made some efforts to particularly reduce barriers in terms of our registration process, in terms of the EDC subcommittee has developed a town and school guide for families. So it's all that information in one place. The website's helpful, but sometimes people want it all in one brochure, one easy place to look. So that's some of the areas and efforts of strength. We've identified, though, that we need to be more systemic, and we'll see this with a few principles, about how we share our great practices with each other. So there may be practices across elementary schools, across our secondary schools that are effective, that have worked really well. And each school has a culture. Each school has family needs and a school culture that varies. But if there's a great idea happening at one school, perhaps they can adopt it to their culture as well. So that's one piece. And secondarily, looking at access to our registration process. So talking with our residency office about how we potentially look at peak registration times, so August, kindergarten and pre-K registration times in the spring, and we've made some great efforts and have great collaboration, but how can we improve that access? In terms of the second principle, it's that, again, what are we sharing with families? What's the information we're sharing back out from the schools to families? And as was mentioned earlier, we have awards night and celebrations kind of at that global level. However, it's as simple as phone calls that teachers make to families, advisors, guidance classroom teachers at the elementary level. It's that communication that we're making the effort to communicate the positive along with any concerns or challenges, and not just at parent-teacher conference time. Again, a need is that systemic identification of those tools. What are the great tools, social media, other tools people are using effectively to share out information? And how do we measure the effectiveness of those efforts? Identifying, how do we know it's working? You know, are we really providing the information that's needed is an area of growth. As we move into two-way communication, we have, the first principles are certainly necessary. You know, we've got to be doing those first two, engaging in those first two principles and constantly refining and improving our work. But this third one represents that need for, as it was defined by the EDC, that reciprocal relationship, that true reciprocity and communication. And so those first two are necessary but not sufficient, that we've really got to move to this third principle in our work to really meet our updated vision for family engagement. And we've seen, for instance, this year, a significant increase in the request for translation services. What a wonderful tribute to the cultural competence work. Teachers are recognizing, I've really got to make that effort to make sure this need is met. So that's an example of the efforts in this regard. We've also sought family input on our process. So we're looking to, with our kindergarten transition process, put together a survey for families as they enter in the fall and say, how was that process for you last year? What did you need? So seeking that feedback and getting that two-way feedback and communication going. One of the pieces we see as a need, though, is not to make assumptions about what parents may need in that two-way communication. Again, getting to the assumption and bias piece, that we seek input prior to future events and seek out information from families on what do you need before we get there. So we are thinking proactively about family needs for communication with us. The fourth principle has to do with increasing dialogue. At the elementary level, we've seen an increase in the number and quality, I would say, of family literacy and mathematics nights over the past several years. Ways for the dialogue to increase between parents and students, staff and students, and all in that triad, and fostering that positive school climate that we know impacts student learning. In terms of other efforts for dialogue, there's been many strides at Wolcott School, for example, with the Hillcrest Area Neighborhood Outreach Center, HANIC Center, to do parent conferences and other informational events at the neighborhood center. So staff have gone to do conferences, and again, based on parents' needs. The area of growth in terms of dialogue is, as Rosina said, identifying who's currently involved and who's not, and why. And considering potentially as part of our climate surveys, additional questions related to family engagement. So looking at what's out there in the research on family engagement, what are those effective measures, and potentially incorporating, initially a few of those measures into our surveys, our annual surveys, to collect that data. And I'll turn over Principle 5 to Rosina. It's about our planning and policy work, and I think the work of the EDC exemplifies this.
So essentially in every organization, there are policies, there are practices, and then there's the reality, when the rubber meets the road. And so we recognize that there may be some gaps between policy and practice, and so that we look to have multiple perspectives in this work that we're doing, so that we're not making assumptions and we're not conveying as being patronizing at all. And so the Equity and Diversity Council, and it continues to grow, we have, again, parent representation. We have community members who are not parents that come out, and they're committed to this work that we're doing. And so we're we're doing road shows about the work and trying to engage more people, and we're trying not to be constrained by time and space. So we're looking at the resources and the systems and structures that we have here in the district, such as the PTO, SEPTO, SAPSI, Mr. Moore, the Substance Abuse Prevention Commission, and the West Hartford Community Network. We're accessing those groups and inviting them to be a part of the work, and having them to kind of be that vehicle to other families too. Another example would be the involvement in principal searches, including parents, and that leadership in our building human capital. Essentially, it's about looking at who's at the table, and then making sure that families have a seat at the table and they have a voice in policy and practice and change, so that we don't want to miss, we know we have blind spots, but we don't want to continue to perpetuate them. So here's a visual that I've used often, but it's changed a lot. I think the first one that I used last year to kind of illustrate the difference between equality and equity were the 3 Caucasian boys looking over the fence, or at least attempting to look over the fence, and just not having what they need. So this is really just, equality is not just giving everybody the same thing, but giving everybody what they need to be successful, to have opportunities, to be engaged and participatory. And there's another one that's actually a wire fence where you can see through. Then there's one with no fence too. But it's just reminding us to have an equity lens. It goes beyond equality. And so last year you all had the opportunity to hear a presentation about the Open Choice Program. It was our 50th anniversary, 50th year as founding participants in the Open Choice Program. And so there were a lot of great things that came out of that. There was a study, did a lot of research. Amy Yarbrough led that needs assessment, and there were some things that were just low-hanging fruit that we could change overnight, didn't cost a thing. And we said, we're not going to stop there. We have to keep going. So when we looked at family engagement, we started looking at the unique needs of open choice families, the uniqueness of it all, not just the needs, but the incredible sacrifices that the families make to be here and to enrich our district. And so we started thinking, well, why don't we really look at our practices around open choice families through that lens too, and then maybe just some of the things that we're doing and some of the changes that we're making might benefit other families as well, that are resident families. And so, we said, we can't continue to make assumptions. We need parent voices, and so one of the voices I'm happy to have here at the table is Jessica Lloyd, and I'm going to let her introduce her children and tell you about her experience.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Lloyd. I am a parent of 3 children that are in a choice program. My oldest is a junior at Hall. My youngest daughter is a freshman at Hall, and my son is a 3rd grader at Morley. And parent engagement 13 years ago is not what it is today. I navigated the system on my own through tons and tons of research, just asking questions and emailing back and forth. And I appreciate the fact that all of the staff I encountered was very open to responding to my needs and very open to working with us, knowing that just a barrier getting to school was a challenge in and of itself. Well, these parents are talking about late high school. My kids leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. They get out of athletic practice and they're getting home in the dark. So their resiliency speaks volumes, and as long as they continue to press forward and engage in as many activities within the school system that they can, I'm going to support them, and I'm going to look for ways to continue to support them. I've had great experiences communication-wise, identifying some areas of deficiencies. My son, he receives services at Morley that were identified, and rather than looking at it from a negative perspective, I'm all for it. You have the services, I'll take them in the best interest of him, and I am so grateful to have them in this community. It's not a school district. To me, it's a community. Everyone has welcomed my children with open arms, and if you didn't know them, you would know they weren't from the district. They go in every morning, not with a great attitude because they're tired and cranky and hungry, but they make the best out of it, and I'm honored to say they've made honor roll every marking period, so ever since they've started in school. So I'm grateful for that. I am grateful for the opportunity to engage with Amy and discuss ways how we can help new parents coming in, because with me navigating on my own, I was blindsided to find out, oh, we don't get a school bus to high school. They have to take public transportation. I didn't know that. I might have not felt the same way. Although, like I said, I am grateful for the opportunity for them to come here, but it's been a challenge. My daughters had to learn how to navigate the bus on their own. The buses don't run how they ran when I was younger, so I can't help them. I'm grateful for the map on the iPhones that can tell them which bus to catch. That's definitely been a great help. But, you know, some days are longer than others, and I just watch them like, this has been a great whirlwind for the last 13 years. And my oldest has kind of set the trend performing high. So all the teachers that, you know, when my youngest daughter comes in and my son came in, and there's still some of the same teachers at Morley, and I'm thankful for that because they know our family. They know how I am. They know how to engage with me, and they know that I'm going to be there. You send me an email, I'm going to respond promptly, and the issue is going to get resolved. No matter whether it's good, bad, indifferent, I'm always available for them. As long as my children are involved, they'll hear from me. And I reach out every now and again, how's so-and-so doing, just to stay on top of things. And it's not, you can't just put your child on the bus and expect that everything is going to go streamlined. It doesn't work like that. You have to do the work just like they do. Some of the areas that I've come to find would be a challenge more recently is career and college readiness with my daughter. She was able to get a job last year at the JCC Swim and Tennis Club, but I found that on my own. As far as like job fairs going on, I'm like, oh, they're having a job fair. Do you want to go? She said, yeah, I'll go with such and such. No. Rule number 1, you don't go apply for a job with your friends. I'll take you because you're not going to get the job. And she got the job, and she was successful, and she see a lot of her friends in the summertime, and Mr. Zatoon brought his daughters over there, and they loved her. So that kind of formed a great relationship with Mr. Zatoon and Alasia as well, and they love her. And they love Jace. My girls are very active in clubs as well as sports, and everyone loves them, and I'm grateful that people welcome them. Some parents don't even mind driving them home, and we live close to the Hartford-Windsor border, so we're way out. And it's just a long ride, but they don't mind. They just kind of marvel at how resilient they are, and, you know, they're just upbeat and have such a positive attitude versus some of their kids that just don't want to do anything because they're tired. Well, I think we're all tired, but, you know, like I said, I'll support them 110%. And some of the areas that need improvement is transportation. I'm hoping that we can get a bus by the time my son gets to high school. Yeah, I mean, it's gone from when my girls rode the bus in elementary school, a 2-hour bus ride. For a 5-year-old, that was kind of long. You know, where do you use the bathroom at? On themselves. Sad to say, but it's much better. It's an hour ride now, so yeah, my son takes his MP3 player, he listens to music, he doesn't mind. But, you know, this is just an evolution of how the program has come along, and I'm glad. And I'm glad that there will be no more going into this district because one is going out to college soon, so we're looking ahead, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being here in the late night hour, and you've got 3 children who, you know, I'm sure want your attention too. In fact, Alasia had a track meet today, and Jessica said, I got to get there. She is the epitome of a super mom. I don't know how she does it, and so much balance and poise. And I could have asked many other parents to be here tonight and to give their voice, but I asked Jessica because, not just because of how supportive she is of our work, but because she gives feedback, critical feedback, in a very supportive way. She owns it too. She's a part of it. And so through her, I've learned to be far less defensive because, you know, she'll point out some flaws or some blind spots and some gaps, but she's always willing to roll up her sleeves and help us. And so I appreciate and respect her for that, adore her children tremendously, and you're gonna hear a lot about them too. Jace spoke at the Martin Luther King celebration in the evening conversation event and talked about the challenges of transportation. I mean, she had lots of wonderful, powerful, important things to say about her participation in open choice, but the biggest challenge we continue to hear is transportation. And although that's something that's not totally in our control, we continue to advocate for it. And now we actually have our neighboring districts and other partners in the open choice program advocating for us too and saying, you know, that's just not right. So we're going to continue to do that work and examine some routes and what could we do, you know. So we hope to be able to get Dylan on a bus, on a high school bus by the time he gets there. So I want to close with just letting you know you've heard some of our strengths, our points of pride, and we've been transparent about areas of growth that are needed. But I just want to also close with our commitments here in summary and where we're planning to go. And just we really need to make sure that we keep students at the center of our focus and all the work that we do. I mean, we're even looking at our policies. They were scrutinizing policies, and the language in the policy. Is the language inviting? And some of it's state language, but some of it's, language that maybe we can look at and make some recommendations to the board from the EDC after we do further study. But we want our approaches to be systemic, not, as I call it, garden variety. We really want to be able to sustain best practice. And so, we appreciate your support. You all have come out to our Equity and Diversity Council meetings. You've listened to our presentations about Open Choice. You've advocated for the students of Open Choice. They're all of our students. And so, we'll leave you with this quote by Joyce Epstein, and just another look at family engagement. And, we thank you for all of your support, too. And thank you, Jessica. And Amy, and principals.
All right, thank you all so much. Any questions for our board? Carol?
I don't really have a question. I have more of a comment, and I just really want to thank the three of you on your presentation. It was great, and what I love about your report and what I love about your presentation is in terms of questions, you're looking for the solutions, and you're constantly looking at that lens, much like you said, Tom, let's not only ask the question, but look at what we can do more. Let's look at some of the solutions. Let's hear from the families. So in terms of your family engagement, that is so key, because you're not just thinking about the district, but you're also thinking about the families that are coming in, your open choice. And I love what you said, Jessica, in terms of you don't feel like an open choice family, you feel like part of the district. And I think that speaks volumes of our district, speaks volumes of our teachers, our administrators, and everybody who's working in it together. The one question that I had when I was going through the report is when families come in to the residency office to register their kids, and we talk about ways of communication, and I'm sure this is asked, but just for my own, we have become so comfortable with thinking that everybody is connected to the web or have access to email and electronics and so forth and so on. And I know people may start off and have a computer and they have, smart devices, and somewhere along the line something happens. Either it may be utility, it may be their computer broke down, and so there's something, amiss. And sometimes they don't want to come forward and say what have you. How do you deal with some of those types of things when they come before you?
So Carrie and I will tag team this. That's a great question of equity, and we recognize that we could do better in that area. I'll just speak to, Tom Moore has a big billboard in his office that he's probably wondering when I'm going to pick up, but I have it in his office to show him. One of our efforts, we are working together to create a school-specific and town-wide resource guide for families to take some of the guesswork out of it. But in terms of some of those documents and things that they need to know and have and say and do, the outreach starts, for the Open Choice family, the outreach starts with CREC and the RESCO, the School Choice Program, and offices. And then we have our own procedure for welcoming students. And so our residency office is well schooled at that. But then once the residency hands off to the school, there's that phone call made, and there's an email that follows with that, and there's that needs assessment about, well, what are your needs, or how can we help you navigate? And so there are forms that are, we still use paper too. We still pick up the phone and talk, but we also, again, we are aware of equity in terms of technology and internet, and try to be responsive and proactive.
And to that point, other superintendents get Post-it notes. I literally get posters to let me know what we need to work on, put in my office, so.
I just have a comment as well. I'd like to thank you so much for this presentation. It's really refreshing to hear. I love the whole idea of family engagement. And I remember, Jessica, hearing your daughter at the Martin Luther King presentation, and it was really powerful. So many people in the room did not realize what it's like just to get to school every day and the sacrifice and the commitment to doing that. And I sure do hope that we can get a bus one day in the near future. But I'd also am interested, because it's been a really welcoming process for you and your family. I wonder, and I know you're doing this, but looking at other schools, how they welcome in, because you hear different stories about how different people feel at the elementary level, and it sounds like Morley's done such a wonderful job. And I think that an example of what you do, benchmarking and looking from school to school, how you can possibly standardize processes when they're really effective.
There's some really wonderful tools. Several years ago, we did a kind of a welcoming schools audit. We literally called each other's, Dr. Moore recalls, we called each other's offices, including mine, and listen to what kind of greeting we got, cold calls. Not really secret shoppers, but, that type of thing. In terms of visitors to schools, families who may not have been from the school or that kind of thing, or may not have known who we were. So there are wonderful tools out there, and that's when we kind of talked about that next level. Let's not take for granted the welcoming schools piece. Let's look at really doing some audits on some of those areas of that are most in need. So kind of where are we now? It's been several years. Changes in staff, office staff, administrators, school staff. So it's important to continually cycle back to those for audit, for lack of a better word.
But I think in addition, Tammy, you're pointing out something that's important. We can't just celebrate all the places. Morley does a wonderful job. It is a model as to what they do. Ryan Clary's principal just is so giving. They've embraced the program. So where it doesn't happen, you can't just say, why can't you be like this? Because everybody's assumption is, no, we're like that too. And so part of it is gathering data and evidence to say, no, you're not, because this is what people think here. And we've been having some hard conversations, and to know Rosina, you think she's always giving bouquets. Rosina's tough and is not afraid of difficult conversations with people to talk about, no, what is happening here? And I think that's the stage, if I'm honest, that's where we are now, where we're saying to people, okay, this is, what's going on here isn't as good as it is somewhere else, and why is that?
Thank you. I just want to echo the fact that this is, in a way, the most important piece of what we do as schools. And it's also gratifying to hear that this is always the challenge, is getting the good ideas up here to filter down into the reality. And it's so great to hear that you're sort of on the ground doing that work. I, of course, had written down transportation too, because, again, we went and met with all the choice people, the open choice people this year, and we said, we need a bus, and they said, too bad. It's not like they're mean, it's just there isn't anything. It's a terrible problem, and I don't know what we're going to do, but we all acknowledge that. But I just had a couple of thoughts. As you know, we lived in Finland for 18 months and sent our kids to Finnish schools, and Finnish is an impossible language. And so my kids didn't think so. They didn't know it was hard, so they just learned it. But their father and I were completely lost. And I mention this only because I'm thinking about this, out welcoming families from that perspective. It's largely, I guess, the language issue, but it might be able to be broadened to other people. I just thought there were three things that we might, I'm sure you're already thinking about, but I would just throw out there. One is, you mentioned that you're getting some translation work this summer on the Town Resource Guide. it might be possible to enlist parents' help in that. First of all, to empower parents to get involved, but second of all, that you can share the work. That I know it's going to be tough for the one Icelandic family, but when there are communities of people, you might be able to tap people who are already here to help with translation so that we have them in multiple languages. And maybe they're not elegant and maybe they're not perfect, but it might bring the community in and serve new people who don't know the language. The second thought is, and again, you may be doing all this, and I'm just speaking, but I'm just trying to think of what would help us, would have helped us. The second is mentors along the same line. If there are already families from a particular community, or who are, whether they're choice families or Indonesian speaking, whatever families, that there might be some pairing that one could do to make the community feel more engaged and make new families engaged. And the third question, I'm mindful of your point that we don't want to be patronizing, and that's totally true. But again, as someone who had no clue what any of the words meant, I just wonder if there are any instructions that we provide, say to Power School or Seesaw or something like that, that are pictorial. Just because, you know, when I was trying to manage things, all I needed to know was that the third button down was the one that I pushed. It didn't matter that I couldn't understand the words. So I'm just wondering if some of the basic stuff that engages parents directly, like Power School or whatever, we might have a pictorial. Again, I don't mean to be patronizing, but for people who just don't know how to do it, it might be an approach. Again, I know that I'm speaking to people who are way beyond me, but I just wanted to throw out some things that would have helped us in Finland.
So thank you for the presentation. It's great. In fact, when you were talking about sharing with families and parent involvement, I actually went and looked at an email that I got sent a couple weeks ago. The questions and my answers, and I should talk to you about this, probably would give me a doctorate, because his questions were like at 30,000 feet, but he said, you know, one of the questions was, how do you get parents more involved in general, and I really think that's, no matter at what level, is really key to success, is having parent involvement. And you know, the way you're sharing with families and that communication that you have going on is essential. And I just wish we could do more of it everywhere, because I really think that makes the difference. When they talk about social economics and things, I always go back to parent communication possibly, you know, and that's, you know, I don't like to think of it as an income level thing. I never do. Although sometimes that's where our discussion goes, because the state kind of evaluates it that way. But I really think that, you know, the more parent involvement, the more successful your kids are. Of course, we have great teachers, right? And they mold and develop those kids. But say, you know, if a kid, say a B student, and there's more involvement, maybe they're an A student, you know, or a C student to a B student. So I just applaud you for that level of communication that you're involving and making sure that it's taking place, because I think that's a game changer, quite honestly.
I'm just very impressed, to go off what Tom said, and I see this, Rosina and Carrie as well, as I'm thinking, the continuous improvement that we strive towards, that we see something working and we're never saying that's good enough. And thank you, and for bringing up and reminding us of the issue of transportation. You know, we're close, but we're not there yet. Maybe the same with the schools. I remember when I talked about my problems with the school construction, I was told, well, when they built Bristol, this was nothing, you know? And it's great. We're always working to get better. And Tom, that's a real good reflection. And Carrie, I remember we did a transitions to kindergarten night one night. And right at the end of the meeting, you were saying, how can we do this better next year? And I see that throughout. So thank you, everyone. It's great, and let's keep up the good work.
Thank you. As you know, I'm very excited about this topic, and I'm really appreciative of your work. And Jessica, welcome. Thanks. It's been great to have your thoughts and input. And Amy, give you a shout out back there. Thanks for stepping up. Yeah, there's lots to say. I mean, my colleagues just covered a lot of it. It strikes me that there's a lot of interconnection with other departments beyond this. I mean, given the work that you're doing, it's so systemic. I think about Rick and the work with recruitment and retention of teachers, that kind of broad systemic work, almost sort of commodifying the work of equity, like making this as a selling point of the district is really be up above and beyond or related to the work that you're doing, which highlights how important it is. Similarly, which is not to be answered now, I wonder, it's always a challenge of doing the kind of qualitative analysis of how do you measure this, right? How do you measure this, and therefore, without this, the anecdotal stuff is great and valuable and illustrative, but how do you take that and think about improvements over time? I'm glad to hear what the language thing, always the translations, more and more Icelandic and other things are critical. And also, I really appreciate the attention and looking through the lens of equity through the experience of the child, because that really undoes the politics of family, in the sense that family is such a political unit, right? If we look at it over time, but to look at what the student needs, regardless of, or not regardless of, but with particular attention to the kind of family they come from, I think that in itself is, part of the kind of cultural competency piece, right? Let's look at different kids come from different families, and let's start there, as opposed to kind of having a rigid definition of family and then trying to unpack that in a kind of traditional way, or whatever different people mean by traditional. So that again, I think is powerful theoretically, and how it plays out with the kind of work you're doing. So I appreciate that. So yeah, later time, would be curious about measurement. I mean, because I know some of the literature, and it's tough, and then, because that relates to our work about, success, and then dollar allocations, and the work that we do on the board in different kinds of positions. But anyway, generally, thanks. All right, damas y caballeros. Speaking of Mr. Rick Ledwith.
Good evening.
There he is.
Yes, hello everyone. Personnel report is on page 19, and this is one of our larger reports of the year, as it reflects all of our end of the year retirements. And you can see that we have 20 retirements for this school year, up from 19 last year. We also have 7 resignations as we head into the summer as well. So our turnover rate as we head into the summer right now is 3%, and that includes all of those retirements. So if you pulled out the retirements, we'd be at less than 1% as we speak. So we will, as we head into the summer, we'll inevitably get some resignations for some folks that will be relocating. So I suspect we'll move away from that 3% and up towards possibly 4 to 5%. Last year we were at 5.5%, so I expect us to be down a little bit from last year. In terms of teacher recruitments, we will be recruiting primarily at the middle school and the high school level. At the elementary level, as you know, as we went through the budget process, we are down sections this year. So we were at 209 classrooms this year. We'll be down at like 202, 203 for next year. But thankfully with the breaks in those, with some of those retirements, we will find places for those impacted teachers. So no elementary teacher will be out of a position due to that reduction in enrollment, which is a good thing. In terms of teacher recruitment fairs, we've been out to a few over the last several weeks. We went to the Correct Minority Teacher Career Fair back in March, and then we went to the NEAG, the Yukon NEAG school fair as well, and we'll end up hiring a number of teachers from both of those fairs who will be joining us in the fall, which is good. We've had some success at both of those events over the last few years. Provided with the board with an update on the Wolcott process a couple of weeks ago, but just to give you a quick update as to where we are right now, we had a real strong day of interviews yesterday. Looking forward to another strong day, hopefully as equally strong tomorrow. And then the second round of interviews will take place next Wednesday evening, where we will invite a host of, to Carrie and Rosina's point in terms of family engagement, we will have several more parents involved in the second round interview. We have 2 in the first round, 2 parents involved in the first round, and then we'll have about 15 parents join us next week for the second round of interviews. And then the third round of interviews would take place the week of May 29th, and we will have an announcement on June 6th for the next principal at Wolcott. So we're very excited with the pool that we have and very confident that we will find our person through this process. So that's where we stand for this month's personnel report. Happy to answer any questions that the board had.
Any questions for Mr. Ledwith?
Great, thank
Looks
you.
like with our appreciation, thank you, sir. Routine matters, approval of the minutes. I may have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting of May 2, 2017.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions, comments, edits? No? No? Carol, no? Mark, no? All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of May 2, 2017, please say aye.
Aye.
I abstain, I was not there. I was missed. Any reports from my fellow board colleagues? No? No. And our students have already gone, so we're going on to future business. Our last board meeting of this academic year is back here on June 6th. It's going to be huge, no doubt. Huge.
Do we have student participation that day?
Not per se, but part of it is about, there's another presentation about cultural competency that kind of ties in, so it's a little bit different than that.
Okay, because, you know, it might be a little selfish, but we should ask the singers to come back at some point. We mentioned them earlier in the day. Yeah, the a cappella, I can't remember their names.
Well, there's Voce, and the truth is...
Might be a good way to end our school year.
Yeah, you are being selfish. They're busy
being
too. They have
selfish for the
finals that
audience.
week.
What's that?
They have finals that
Oh,
week.
okay.
I'll check into it. I will check into it for you.
But it would be nice to go
one of
out
the
on a
groups-
swan
if
song.
Hall or Conard, I will check if one of the groups is available.
I would like a full band. No, no, no. Any requests? That's true.
Maybe we can have a presentation by, a song and dance by our members, our student members.
Maybe. Any other thoughts, guys? Requests for future agenda items? Any comments from visitors? No? God, the numbers. We do not have executive session. I have a motion to adjourn, please. Second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning? We are adjourned.